being 7 o'clock, I would call the meeting of the Select Board of
March 12th. Yeah.
Is that reverberating? I have it muted, so why is that?
No, I think we're all right.
Maybe I'm just hearing it. Okay. Sorry, just Zoom duplication of March 12th, 2024. Note this meeting is being televised, streamed, or recorded by Bourne TV. If anyone in the audience is recording or videotaping, they need to acknowledge such at this time. Michael Roush. Use of flash photography during Select Board meetings is prohibited. If anyone from the public wishes to access the meeting, they can do so by calling the following conference line, 1-929-205-6099. The Zoom meeting ID is 869-5775-5505, and the password is Bourne, all capitals, BOURNE. The Zoom chat will not be monitored. Participants who wish to speak must raise the hand icon until the chair asks them to unmute. All items within the meeting agenda are subject to deliberation and votes. We begin with a moment of silence to recognize our troops and public safety personnel. And before we salute the flag, we are going to send our support to the Bourne boys basketball team at the MIAA Final Four, playing Burke High School tonight at Bridgewater Raynham. So we wish them best of luck. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Reading of the Select Board vision and mission statements.
I'll take the vision, I guess.
Okay, Jared?
Bourne is a proud community that embraces change while respecting the rich heritage of its town and its villages. It is a municipality based on strong fiscal government with a durable economy that recognizes the rights of all citizens, respects the environment, especially the coastal areas of the community and the amenities that it affords. Bourne embraces excellent education and offers to citizens a healthy, active lifestyle.
Thank you. And the mission.
I'll do the mission tonight.
All right, Melissa.
Bourne will maximize opportunities for social and economic development while retaining an attractive, sustainable, and secure coastline and environment for the enjoyment of residents and visitors. Through responsible and professional leadership and in partnership with others, Bourne will strive to improve the quality of life for all residents living and working in the larger community.
Thank you. Next item is public comment on non-agenda items. Does anyone have public comment this evening? Seeing none. We will move on to the joint meeting with the Finance Committee. Looks like you may now have a quorum. So you want to call your Finance Committee meeting to order? Carla, Amanda, and Priscilla are on Zoom.
Okay, so
Yes.
we'll call the Finance Committee meetings order, 7:03 PM.
Thank you. And this item is for the presentation and discussion of the FY 2023 audited financial statements by CLA.
And I believe Sarah is here tonight with you by Zoom to make the presentation.
Sarah, you want to introduce yourself and begin your presentation?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. My name is Sarah Salvi. I am the audit director on the town's financial statement and single audits. I was here last year. Chris Rogers, who is the principal on the audit, unfortunately couldn't be here, but if there are any questions that I can't answer that need to be directed toward him, he would be happy to answer those and get back to you. I've been on the town of Bourne's audit for the past 5 or 6 years now, about 14 years in the industry, so feels weird to say 14 years, it's a long time. So I wanted to just thank you for inviting me here tonight, and thank you for your flexibility with me being here virtually with a little one at home. That's very helpful. And I also just want to thank Erica and her team, and Michael Ellis, the town accountant. You might notice that I'm here a little bit sooner than we were here last year, so there was a very clear effort to get back on track in terms of timing for the audit. So I appreciate that. I'm going to share my screen if I can. And I will get started on the presentation here. I do apologize, there were...
Just before you start, I just want to let people know that the full audit is available on the town website under the Finance Department audits, and it's the FY23 audit, and the full audit is available for the public at that location. So, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
And I do want to apologize, there are a couple of different versions of this floating around. There are no major differences, but maybe just some formatting changes and a couple of amounts, a couple of numbers within, but nothing that should cause any concern. So hopefully this version that I have is the most updated, so this will be what I'm following along with. So I'll get right into it here, and we'll just go into the agenda, what we're going to talk about tonight. The terms of the engagement. We'll go into an executive summary, get into some more specific financial highlights, and then we'll discuss the management letter, a couple of comments there, and then we'll have some questions at the end if there are any questions. So we'll get right into the terms of the engagement. This hasn't changed from year to year. We express opinions on whether the basic financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with GAAP. This year, as in previous years, we provided our opinion, which was an unmodified opinion, the best opinion that you can get, essentially saying that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with GAAP. In addition, we express an in relation to opinion on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. We call this the CFA. We also express an opinion on compliance related to major federal award programs. You may know this as the single audit. This year it was ARPA and ESSER that we looked at for the single audit, so we can get into that in just a few minutes. We also provide a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and grants. We call this the gas report. We provide a report on the internal control over compliance related to the major federal award programs, the uniform guidance report, and then a management letter based on identified control deficiencies that we found during the audit. The management letter is required for any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. The town did not have any of those. The comments provided, it's really just to make recommendations on how to strengthen internal controls. So again, we will get into that moving forward. So we'll go into the executive summary. As I stated on the financial statement side of things, before we get into the single audit and management letter piece here, the opinion provided was an unmodified opinion. So financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with GAAP. The single audit, which is not entirely complete at this point, we audited ARPA and ESSER as the major grants this year, based on dollar amounts and the fact that the OMB did note them as riskier grants, of course, because they're newer, a lot of money flowing through. So for ARPA, we are waiting on finalizing some compliance procedures related to procurement. Just a few items left that we need to wrap that up. At this point, we have not identified any compliance findings. So ESSER, on the school side, there were no findings there. And at this point, again, with ARPA, nothing to report there. For the management letter, we have 2 comments that we reported, and we will get into those later on in the presentation. So we'll jump right into some financial highlights, starting with the governmental activities. So governmental activities, essentially all of your governmental funds rolled up into one column on that, the government-wide financial statements, and then adding in your long-term assets, long-term liabilities. So net position for the governmental activities ended at $27.8 million. This was a pretty big increase from the prior year at $9.6 million last year. The net investment in capital assets was $98.6 million. Restricted was $30.1 million. This is going to include all of your grants. And then that $8.5 million related to self-insured health insurance activities. The unrestricted net deficit was $101 million. That actually decreased, the deficit decreased quite a bit. That $101 million is basically a direct result of the net pension liability and the net OPEB liability. Those amounts shown there are net of the deferred inflows and outflows. So adding in those deferred inflows and outflows to those liabilities. There's typically going to be big swings in that net position amount just because the net pension liability, the net OPEB liability, they're so large, they're changing from year to year based on the assumptions and the actuarial valuation. So that's not surprising to see those big swings, but certainly trending upward for governmental activities. Moving forward into the general fund, which is basically showing, if you will, the health of the town's financials. So fund balance ended at $27 million. The prior year you ended at $24 million. So again, trending upward here. The restricted fund balance, $337,000. This has a new piece to it this year. This number includes the opioid settlement funds as well. So the settlements were finally settled. And so that's going to include about $200,000 of that opioid settlement money. The remaining piece of that is restricted for debt service. Committed funds, $9.6 million, which is made up of the capital stabilization fund at $3.8 million. The climate resiliency stabilization at about $103,000. $4.5 million of continuing appropriations, and then money set aside for subsequent years expenditures of $1.2 million. The assigned fund balance made up of entirely encumbrances at $329,000, and then your unassigned fund balance is $16.8 million. Of that, $4.7 million is related to the general stabilization. That unassigned fund balance increased from $15.3 million up to that $16.8 million. That's basically a direct result of the budgetary surplus. So there was about $8.96 million in a budgetary surplus, but on the flip side of that, about $7.6 million was used to fund the budget of reserves, was used to fund the budget. So the difference between those is essentially showing you that change in that unassigned fund balance. So all good things continuing the trend of trending upward here. Here's just a picture of the general unassigned fund balance to expenditures and transfers out. Pretty typical. What you see in 2020 is essentially COVID. So those last 4 months of 2020, FY 2020 were expenditures were quite low. And so of course your unassigned fund balance is going to be a higher percentage there. And then moving forward, you see that drop in 2021 as things sort of get back on track, but continuing to trend upward in a healthy way to move back to normal, if you will. And so we'll move into the sewer enterprise fund. The total net position here, $8.3 million, was made up of the net investment in capital assets, $7.3 million, which is now going to include that wastewater treatment plant. The unrestricted net position ended at 945,000. So here you have the net pension liability and net OPEB liability at about 192,000 and 233,000 respectively. Also here, in the prior year, there was the Mass Clean Water Trust interim loan. This year, that changed to a permanently financed loan. So instead of that interim loan, you have in the bonds and notes payable, that's where you'll find that Mass Clean Water Trust, now a permanently financed bond. And so there are capital contributions that are showing in the sewer enterprise fund. Those capital contributions are related to the loan forgiveness and the subsidies for that Clean Water Trust loan. So last year, since it was an interim loan, those weren't showing. This year we did show those as capital contributions. So you'll see those. And moving into the landfill enterprise fund, a total net position here of 21.9 million, which is made up of the net investment in capital assets, 9.1 million. The unrestricted net position, 9.9 million. Here you're seeing the net pension liability and what should say the net OPEB liability, totaling 2.2 million and 2.7 million respectively. The cash that's set aside for the closure and post-closure is about 14.3 million, and the landfill liability totaling 11.5, which has gone up from the prior year. That is due to adding in that phase 9 piece to the post-closure costs. So that's basically where the entirety of that increase came from, is adding in that phase 9 here. And so we'll look at the long-term obligations. This is going to be made up of the debt, the landfill liabilities, and compensated absences. So last year, again, you did see a separate line for the interim loan for the Clean Water Trust. That has now rolled up into the bonds and notes payable. So for governmental activities, the long-term obligations totaled $49 million. Debt, the debt piece of that was 46.6. This is going to include that that $5 million for the energy improvements finance purchase. You guys might know this as a lease with Train Inc. For the purposes of financial reporting under GAAP, we had to call it a finance purchase. So we're not recognizing it as a lease. It's essentially in that debt section there underneath the bonds and notes payable. Compensated absences was 2.4 million. That was a bunch of a change from the prior year. Business type activities, 18.2 million in total. The debt totaled 6.5. Again, you're going to see that the Mass Clean Water Trust piece is in there. When you look at the ins and outs from this footnote on page 52, you'll see the interim loan that's being taken out is much higher than the additions to the bonds and notes, and that difference there is going to be that subsidy and the loan forgiveness piece. So that's why there's a difference in what's coming off and what's going in to that long-term bonds and notes payable piece. The landfill, again, 11.5 million, and then the compensated absences, which is 223,000. That did not change much from last year as well. Moving into OPEB, note 11. So the net OPEB liability totals $57 million. This, actually, I have the change from last year. Last year was $64 million. So that OPEB liability getting smaller, which in part is definitely going to be in part due to the employer contributions. There was $4.9 million in the current year of employer contributions, so that's great. The total OPEB trust assets at the end of the year was 8.1 million. Again, moving forward with funding that OPEB liability, which you can clearly see is having an impact on that net OPEB liability. Just some sensitivity trend rates. So the net OPEB liability was calculated using a 6.5% discount rate. If that rate was 1 percentage point higher, you would have a net OPEB liability of 50.8 million. If it was 1 percentage point lower, you're landing at 64.4 million. Same thing with the healthcare trend rate. The assumptions used by the actuary, if it was 1 percentage point higher, you would have $65.8 million in that net OPEB liability. And if it was 1 percentage point lower, $49.8 million. And then the pension plan, of course, Barnstable County Retirement is the pension plan that the town is part of. And so of that plan, the town's portion is 5.667% based on the December 31st, 2022 measurement date. And I think the town's contributions in the current year were $4.5 million. And that net pension liability of $47 million calculated at the 6.9% discount rate. Again, just some sensitivity information. So if that percentage was 1% higher, you would land at $34.4 million, and 1 percentage point lower, $62.1 million. So those were the financial highlights. If there are any questions, we can certainly discuss those prior to going into the management letter. If not, I will get right into the management letter comments that we have.
Is it, Jim?
Hi, can you define discount rate in this context?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing.
How do you define the discount rate?
The discount rate is a rate that is determined by the actuary, which is typically, and I don't want to misspeak on this, so it's the municipal bond rate. It's a combination of a couple of things that the actuary puts together. So I don't want to misspeak. It is described in the actuarial valuation. So that would be a better question for the actuary in terms of how that is determined. That's not something that we do.
So, thank you. Qualitatively, is it our return on the money?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I think that's what it is. We have money in there. If the interest rate or the money that we're receiving is higher, then the liability is going to be lower. If the rate is lower, then the liability is going to be higher. And sort of conversely, with the expenses, if health insurance expenses go up, then our liability is going to be higher. If they go down, our liability is going to be lower. So it's just an adjustment on future. The OPEB and pension are basically based on 30 years of liability.
Thank you.
So whatever they think we're going to have to pay for medical or for other post-employment benefits over the next 30 years is what the number of liability is that's that's a whole separate report that's done by the actuaries. So, but one thing I just want to comment is a few years ago when we started with putting money aside from OPEB, our liability was over 130 million. And so we've really, every piece of money that we put in really helps us tremendously in terms of the reduction of that overall net liability. I mean, the liability is still there, but because we're putting money away, it'll help pay for it. So, anybody else have any questions? I actually have a question. I think it's on slide 12. On the liabilities for the business type activities. You said debt, 6.5 million. And then you said landfill, 11.5 million. That's not debt for the landfill, it's something else for the landfill?
It's the landfill liability itself. So that closure and post-closure care costs. Yes, yes.
Okay, so it's closure and post-closure liabilities.
Yeah,
Okay.
that debt amount of $6.5 million, that's going to include both sewer and landfill bonds and notes payable.
Okay. Okay.
All right. All right, so we can jump right into the management letter here. So 2 comments and recommendations. There is a version floating out there, 3 comments and recommendations. The first one being IT. It was determined that for privacy purposes, that comment, since it was not a material weakness or significant deficiency, we would provide that separately, again, for privacy security reasons. So that was provided to management, and so that is not included in the management letter here. So I will go into our 2 management letter comments, just a little background on this before I jump into these 2 comments. As part of our audit procedures, we look at internal controls over financial reporting. Some years we're focusing on a department, some years we're focusing on a specific control that's going to have a major impact on financial reporting. For example, bank reconciliations, something like that. So this year we did look at DPW as a department, just kind of general procedures, and we came out with these 2 recommendations. So the first recommendation, inventory tracking at DPW. We had conversations, and currently the inventory tracking is being done informally, so there are no formal procedures. There's no record of the inventory. So by inventory, we're talking small equipment, tools, things like parts for vehicles. And so, again, there's nothing that we could do to test this because there actually wasn't anything being tracked and recorded. And so we recommended that the software system MTC Pro be used, which the town has already purchased. So the town already, or I'm sorry, DPW already has this in their possession. They have access to it. It's just not being utilized. We're recommending that moving forward it is utilized so that they can track the inventory moving forward. So that's that first one there. And then the second comment here is related to capital expenses. So this is in relation to operating expenses being charged to capital line items. We did not discover this in our audit. It was brought to our attention by the management team, the finance team, and adjustments were done accordingly by the town prior to the audit even starting. Our review of the DPW department did include a discussion of how this happened and why there just seemed to be a general misunderstanding of what might be considered capital. We did select a couple of purchases that were originally charged to the capital accounts just to look at what they were for, and similar to what they stated in terms of that the purchases were for a capital item, so something like windshield wipers for a capital item like a vehicle, but it was not extending the life of the asset, which is what the intention of that capital budget was for. So our recommendation is to just get some internal controls in place to make sure that those expenses are being charged to the right budget line. And so any questions, comments there?
The management letter includes the response from management. Is it possible for that to be talked about now, or yes, no?
If you'd like to. Sure.
Yes, I think that would be good. I mean, I don't know who responded, so yeah. But I do think that, you know, what the management response to the 2 comments would be and how you're addressing them.
Erica, would you like to would you like to summarize those responses?
Erica, you're muted.
Thank you, Sarah. Wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without someone being muted. In regards to the DPW inventory tracking, I collaborated with Matt Sawicki, the Director of Public Works, to determine what our response would be, since this directly affects the department. And they have begun the process of re-implementing the use of the digital asset management software for tools and equipment. And they're currently evaluating not just MTC Pro, but some other software to find a program that really maximizes what and most efficiently does what they need it to do. So we are anticipating that this be fully operational by the end of fiscal 25. So this is underway. In regards to the capital expenses, we met and we kind of came up with a plan that the DPW director and the finance department would review procedures to ensure expenditures are properly charged to the operating capital line items. This would include, reviewing what the article is for, and prior to procuring items for capital articles, the DPW director will review and communicate project details, including a list of items of services allowable with his staff, and then he will review purchase requests to the project details and submit for preliminary payment upon receipt. He'll review the actual invoices and then submit those to finance for payment, and if the charge is determined eligible, it will be charged to the article. The most important thing is that we've opened up a really good line of communication. We have a plan in place, and any questions that arise, we'll consult with DPW director, finance team, town administrator if necessary.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments about the audit? Anne Marie?
Was there any particular reason why the MT Pro wasn't being used? Was it in place, and, did people need training on it in order to use it? Was there any, I don't understand why, if it was in place, it wasn't used. Is this something you inherited?
I'm gonna ask if Sarah can please take the slides down.
If I can, stop share. Okay, there we go.
Thank you. So I think the question was directed at me.
Please answer. No, it has to go through me, so yes.
Sorry.
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I don't know why the department stopped using the software, and I don't know when they stopped using the software. I have no idea if it was in use
Okay.
in the near future or not.
I will say that when we were working on Dude Solutions, which was like August, September of 2020, of 2020.
2020, yeah.
When we were going through, there was a whole, they went through all the buildings and they did building analysis. But part of that asset was also tracking service of vehicles, but DPW was already using something else, and that's when there was Edwin Rivera was the service director there at DPW. So he had a tracking that he was doing for those parts and service. I don't know whether they started using a different thing or what happened, but there was a change in personnel there too, so it might have been new personnel that wasn't familiar with it. So I think the important thing is to get a system that works and does what they want it to do and start implementing it.
Just
If-
to
if
add,
I-
go ahead.
Is that Sarah?
If I may, yeah, we did ask that question, and the response we got was basically manpower. The manpower to operate a system like that and also do their day-to-day activities. At that point, it just wasn't feasible for them to do that. That was the response that we got from them.
And I will say that when we were talking about Dude Solutions and the turnover that was necessary, we did talk about that manpower issue and the data entry and maybe getting an intern from Mass Maritime to help with that implementation because they
That
used
was one of the suggestions, was
Right.
bringing some of the students from the Maritime.
Right.
And I think it's worthy to just remember that software costs a lot of money, generally. So if we're researching new software, we might want to also consider the price of the original software and if it's worthy now.
Right.
Right? But I just.
Well, the software's in place, correct?
This
How long
one-
has it been in place?
Well, MTC, I don't know what the MTC Pro
MTC
is.
Pro.
That's an inventory software for
Right.
inventory and parts.
Right.
And I don't know about that. And I don't even know if it's the same thing that Edwin was using.
But we're on track for inventory, for assets.
Making a
and-
plan.
We're not
Getting
on
there.
track yet.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Working through the muck to get to the weeds, if you will.
Right. I mean, it's important to understand our
It
assets
is.
and.
Yes. Well, I
And to
will
maintain
say
them.
that over the years, there have been numerous comments in the audits about inventory. And there have been a number of attempts to sort of work on inventory, which is part of why we started doing the Dude Solutions, but what happened with that is COVID happened. And the training of everyone that was supposed to happen in March of 2021 didn't, I just, so. That's it. Anything else? I want to make a comment, and this just is on the government fund. It doesn't have to do with the business funds. But I went back to look because when all the gap accounting started and they started booking all these liabilities that they hadn't been booking for government entities, the pension liability and the OPEB liability, it created deficits on the financial statements. So on the government side, in fiscal year 20, the financial statement showed a government fund deficit of 27.8 million. And every year since then, we have made sincere efforts with our OPEB funding and other pension. The Barnstable County pension has added an additional payment that all the towns are making to have the pension 100% funded, hopefully by 2032. So these extra payments that we're funding under current year dollars, reduced in FY '21, our deficit went down to 11.3 million. In FY '22, we turned into the positive at 9.5 million. And this year, the positive balance is 27.8 million. So I think it's really worth noting that the town has been working really hard and taking great strides in being really strong financially. So kudos to the staff and the administration, the finance committee, and the select board for doing a good job. So that is my comment on progress. Okay, we good? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, for coming in, and we appreciate your report. Thank you, Erica and Michael, for being good stewards of our finances.
Thank you for having me here. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you next year.
Next year?
Okay. All right.
Thank
then.
you.
Do you want to adjourn the finance committee?
Yes. Is there a motion to adjourn the finance committee?
Second?
Moved by Tom, second by Wayne. Roll call vote. All in favor of adjourn? Well, hang on.
The roll call.
Yes, right. Carla?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, next item is update from the Southside Fire Station Building Committee. Welcome, Wayne Sampson. You
Go anywhere,
can
Wayne.
actually stay at your seat if you want, or you can go to the podium. You
No,
have
this
a
is fine.
microphone.
That's great. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Wayne Sampson, Southside Fire Station Committee. We had a meeting this afternoon. and to give our committee an update of where we stood relative. As you're aware, we did put out another RFP last month. That's at least the fifth one that I'm aware of that the two committees have put out. And we did not approve the one response that we got. It was outside the area as well as the cost. So we've gone back to the drawing board a little bit, and actually, we knew that this day might be coming relative to what our options were. So as a result of today's meeting, the Southside Fire Station Building Committee voted unanimously to seek your recommendation, to recommend to you and seek your support to remove approximately 3 acres of land from 97, Article 97 protection on Shore Drive, north of the ball fields, okay? And this, the reason for this, really the critical reason is that we can't find any other land available in town, but also that 70% of all of the fire department calls for service on the south side of the bridge, I want to be very specific, on the south side, lays in that overlay district between Monument Beach and Pecasset. This is absolutely one of the best possible locations that we could have to give a timely response to 70% of our residents. That's, to us, that was just a critical selling point. In addition to that, we preserve, let me say it again, we preserve all of our recreational facilities at both locations, which is huge to everybody. And we'll probably, in the end, help enhance the ones on Shore Drive now. In addition to that, we save the taxpayers the outright cost of buying another piece of property someplace else, which all the properties that we looked at were in the millions of dollars. So it's a huge savings to the community as well. Now, that being said, we recognize that there is a process that needs to be followed to complete this task. Our committee is committed to doing that, and we're ready to get started, if we get your board's recommendation and support, and that's what we'd like to recommend.
And so, MJ,
Yes.
as part of the process moving forward, is the first step would be going to Conservation Commission, and when you want to take something out of Article 97, it needs to be a unanimous vote with the Conservation Commission. After that, the select board will have to, put an article in at special and annual town meeting, and that vote to remove the land needed from Article 97 needs 2/3 vote because it's an interest from real estate. And if that does happen, then it goes up to Boston, and there's a whole separate process for that as well, which I don't totally have in my head. Marlene or Liz.
So we need a 2/3 vote of both houses of the legislature for that.
And town meeting.
And
Yes.
have a town meeting first, yes.
So, thank you for that. This is like a deja vu, because we were in a meeting in this room a couple years ago, and we talked about probably the best property and the best way to go about was the Shore Road property. But when you want to take money out of Chapter 97 land, you actually have to demonstrate that there's no feasible alternative. And so one of the things that I am going to ask, because the documentation, I think we're at a point now where we have to start putting this all in places where it's available to the public. So if you go to the Southside Fire Station website, there's no information. There's no minutes since 2022. There have been a lot of things that have happened. I don't know if the minutes for the fire station committee include the documents, like the runtime things, the different documents. And I've seen spreadsheets of, these, been various iterations of all the different properties that we have looked at and the reasons why they're not a suitable alternative. And before you go to conservation, that whole thing has to be put together in a document, and I don't know who's gonna do that, who has all that information, whether it's, Pomeroy or the committee, or,
So, if I could address the issue about the minutes. So I received some information at the end of last year
Yeah.
that those minutes were meeting. It's the first time it came to our attention. I went back and found as many as I could. I also found that there was a period of time in there where there were no minutes, and there weren't a lot of meetings either. So, our committee, since being reappointed last year, we have caught up. We have 100% compliance with all of our minutes.
yes, and I'm sure you do, and I'm sure they get submitted to the town clerk's office, and they're on file in the town clerk's office.
Yes.
They are not on the website, at the page of the website, so we need to figure out a mechanism for the minutes of the Southside Fire Station Committee, once they're approved by the committee, to get posted under minutes.
Okay.
Your agendas are posted, but we need a facility for getting those minutes posted. So the public has easily the ability to look and see what you're doing and how you're doing it. I mean, the meetings are generally on Zoom, and they are filmed by Bourne Community TV, so people can go and watch them. But having resources available, and this is my experience talking about, we're gonna be talking about questions at town meeting, we're gonna be talking about asking for money, so we wanna make sure that all the information that possibly can be available. So what I would like to ask is that, before you go to conservation, that you come to the select board with the documentation of all the alternatives that have been considered and the reason why each alternative was determined not to be feasible. Because when you look at conditions for disposition exceptions, all other options to avoid the Chapter 97 disposition have to have been explored and no feasible or substantially equivalent alternatives exist. And I think that is true. I think we can document it. I think this is the right move. But I think we need to start putting together our documentation so that when we go to town meeting or we go to conservation or we're asking the legislature, everything is clearly documented.
I think there's approximately 20 locations that we have looked at.
Oh,
and
I mean,
researched.
and there's even casual, there are things like, people have asked like the Santander Bank, and that was looked at, but it's in that, water restricted zone. So there are so many pieces of property that have been looked at.
Yes.
Going back like, I mean, maybe a year ago in the summer, when we were looking at different properties, all the properties. And so I think it's there. I think the committees looked at it. I just think that we need to make sure that it's accessible to the public so that they can say, oh, they looked at that property and they looked at that property and this one didn't work for this and this one didn't work for that. So I think that would be very helpful, because I do think that we need to move forward. So I would like to have that as soon as possible. I don't know when you're going to conservation. You need to provide them with the documentation for your request like 15 days before the meeting. So it should work, if we can get, we'll get you as soon as you get it, we'll get you on here. The other thing I would like to see is, there's this conservation land on Shore Road, and there's a piece of the parcel that you're considering using for this. I'd like to have a map that shows what that parcel looks like, so everyone's clear that it's north of the ball field, it's not including the ball field.
Correct.
But it does abut residential land, so the usable piece of it and how much the fire station's gonna impinge, on that property, I think is important. Because we've had situations where we thought we had a good shot, and then, we started looking at it on paper, and it became not quite so, good. So, I would like to see that.
Okay.
Those two things before you go to conservation, so that they can have it. But I would, any other comments from any of your members?
We need like a vote of this board, saying they support the recommendation of the Southside Fire Station.
I think I want to, I think I want a vote of the board that they should move forward with this process. I think that the board should actually see all the documentation. I think it's the right move. I just, I think we need to be able to explain why we think it's the right move. Jared?
So just to add to yours, you mentioned putting all the meeting minutes and the properties that we looked at and all of, I just want to make sure that the other thing that would be very, very good to have on there, like you said, is the map. And at this point, we're not ready to spot the location of the building on that
Correct.
property.
Right.
But let's just at least get a
Gateway.
map on the
The
website, yeah, on the page, so that the folks out in the public can see that. At least give them an idea of, you know, how much tree loss is gonna be there, and have an idea of how it infringes, yeah.
Yeah, because that's a large conservation, the whole conservation piece is quite large. And the ball field's sort of in here, and then there's to the north, there's this section that 3 or 4 acres that we're talking about. Then there's the ball field, then there's a whole lot of land south that's conservation also. And I think it's helpful for people to really have a picture of what we're doing and what it's gonna look like.
And we would certainly consider the largest possible buffer zone, obviously.
Right.
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 So,
Personally, it's probably the best site overall when we, you know, after looking at all the different sites. It will not affect any recreational use over there, which was the biggest thing. Yes, Article 97, protection in land, is you want to protect it from development, but there's a public, there's a public necessity for public safety facility, fire station specifically, on that side of the bridge. You know, it's been way too long that they've gone with what they have, and we've been working now between Pecasset, Monmouth Beach. Right now, we're just sleeping in a double-wide portable. So it's long overdue, and I think this is the right thing to do, you know, just for the residents in the town, in that area.
I think the other thing that we need to be thinking about is the condition number 2, and this is the 1998 version of disposition of 97 land, and this is under review right now, and I don't know what's happening and what's under review. I only can go with what's current. But the disposition of the subject parcel and its proposed use do not destroy or threaten a unique or significant resource. So, I don't know how that gets documented and when that gets documented, or whether that's something that conservation will ask us to do before they take a vote. So I think it is important to get to conservation soon to find out what their questions are and what information they're gonna want before they vote unanimously to support. But I think the first step is to demonstrate to them that you've really done your super due diligence in documenting that there is no other feasible location, really.
So our committee plans on having a planning session to prepare for the
Yep.
Conservation Commission. So those are the types of things that we'll research out in advance, and we'll try to answer whatever questions they might have.
Sounds good. So, it's a motion.
Motion that we support the Southside Fire Station's recommendation to move forward with taking some land out of Article 97 for the Shore Road property for a fire station.
I'll second it.
So I got a motion by Peter and a dual second by Anne Marie Jarrett.
AJ?
Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed, abstentions, it's unanimous. I think we are at a critical place here, where we need to be in good communication and frequent communication over the next couple months until we get to town meeting, so that we make sure that we get everything done that we need to do. And I think your committee voted or requested placeholders for
Yeah.
articles. are there two articles? One to take the, to take the land out of 97, and then to authorize the select board to file legislation for that, or?
I believe it's one article. I will confirm that with town
Okay.
council now that I know that,
We should be moving forward with it, yeah. I think this is good. I think that when I was at the MMA conference and like thinking about all different things and was thinking, you know what, we gotta move. So I'm really, you guys have done a great job. You've really moved quickly. You've done things step by step, methodically, and you've been very thorough. And I hope that this turns out to be the right answer and that we can get it done.
So do we.
All right then. So thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next is consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we have library donation totaling $125.04. Seasonal license renewal for Jarvis Inc., DBA The Chart Room at 180 Shore Road for common victular all alcohol, weekday and Sunday entertainment. Class 2 auto dealer renewal for Cape Cod Restoration Inc. at 4 Crane Circle. Authorize the DPW to use Chapter 90 funds to update the pavement management plan. Appointment of Richard Cantor as full-time member of the Historic Commission with a term ending June 30th, 2024.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Is there any further discussion?
Thank you, Heather and Jonathan, for your donations.
Yes. And this is some sort of thing where like I think you buy things or something and a portion of it goes to the library, so that's why it was a weird amount. I would also like to say I was very happy to see the proposal from our DPW director, Matt Sawicki, on the pavement management plan, and having it updated, and that when it is updated and we have a pavement management plan, could we please have it presented to the Board of Selectmen so the board and the public know what our plans are for pavement management? It's an important thing to stay on top of, so, thank you. Review town meeting articles.
We didn't vote.
I'm sorry, yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda, aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous, okay, thank you. Okay, now review town meeting articles. Septic easement, Monument Avenue.
so the board did discuss this a little while ago. This was the request by a homeowner to use part of the road layout for an advanced IA septic system to replace I think it was a cesspool.
Yes.
And you had asked that DPW and the health department provide you with some recommendations as far as like conditions that would make at least the staff confident that this is something we could move forward with if so desired. So in your packet, beginning on page 41, there are memos from both DPW and the health department. And Matt and Caitlin are both on Zoom. If you want to ask them any questions. And really, the decision point is whether or not the select board wants to move forward with an article to grant an easement at the town meeting or not.
Okay, any questions or comments, or would you just like to have an explanation of the different recommendations of DPW? Where would you like to begin first? Recommendations?
Sure.
Anne-Marie, okay. Matt, you want to explain, do you want to kind of review the recommendations?
Yeah, sure. We'd like a performance bond from the contractor, just to protect us in case there's any damage to the road, going forward after the project is done. The project will be on the edge of the road. It won't actually encroach in the pavement, but it'll be abutting the paved area. So we just want to make sure that if there's any cracking or any future damage to the road, that we have that bond in place. Because there'll be an overdig, and when they install a septic system, it's left overnight, we want to make sure there's a shoring plan that's given to us by an engineer, so that when that excavation is left overnight, there won't be any settling or crumbling of the sides of the trench. They just need to work with police and fire in case there's any barricades they need set up. We're requesting a 6-foot temporary fence installed around the excavation, so when it is left overnight, it's a protected area. We also want them to reach out to the Bourne Water District. You need to have a certain separation between septic and water pipes. And we want to make sure that any part of the septic system is meeting the criteria that the Bourne Water District has. And they just need to supply the regular utility permit through the town. And we'd also like them to work at specific periods of time, either between October 1st and December 15th, or between March 15th and May 1st. That area of Monument Road is, it's a small road, and it'll be very difficult in winter to deal with any snow removal if they're excavating. And also in the summer, there'll be a lot of seasonal traffic. And we just had our, this town standard liability and insurances that we like to have the contractor, have also.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from the board, comments? I have a question from the board. This is and from Arlene. This is a interest in property. Is there anything that we should be doing in terms of procurement or getting an estimate of the value of this? I mean, should we be looking for compensation to the town for this easement, or should we be just saying that this is for the economic and environmental benefit of the town, and therefore we grant the easement for those purposes?
Typically, this type of easement you would not be receiving compensation for. Typically. I mean, that's not to say that you couldn't negotiate, but typically these types of easements are granted because of the benefit of the upgrade to the septic system.
I think that makes sense to me, and I think that we're going to find in the future, if we pursue IA systems as our, as what we do, for our wastewater management, that there'll be more situations like this. I just wanted the board to think about, is this the precedent that we want to set? If the precedent we want to set is that this is for the environmental benefit, that if it's recommended by the health department and we have the conditions met that are recommended by DPW, that we recommend to the town meeting that they grant this easement.
So I think,
Jared?
if I may, yeah, I think, in this particular instance, and a lot of the others coming forward, it is the betterment of the environment, and that's a big thing, especially where the property is so close to the water.
Yep.
And with the fact especially that it is not encroaching into the pavement, it's actually the area of the shoulder, if you will. It's really not much of a shoulder there. Everything's very tight in that area. And it also renders keeping the character of the village, rather than having to take a small portion of the house down so you can fit your septic. It keeps to the character of the village. So I think this is the right thing to do. And every situation will dictate, obviously,
Right.
its own parameters.
I actually was thinking when we were in the Savory Avenue situation, and those lots, like trying to get septic system on there was a lot of discussion about them having to go underneath the road to be able to fit in their septic systems. And so I think we're gonna have to just be flexible and do what we can.
Yeah.
As long as we can still use the road, and as long as it doesn't impede on our use of our property, it's underneath the surface, that it's a way to go, so.
And I think having the bond as a
Into
backup
2
is,
years will be,
I mean, that's valuable in the event anything should happen, and I think
Right.
that suffices with respects to, you know, other compensation.
Right. I just wanted to have that discussion and sort of have that consensus before we move forward. Well, that's good. Are there any other questions, or are we,
Madam Chair?
yes?
Is it me?
Yeah, to you.
Yes, you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I saw your hand go. I got you covered.
Is anybody else?
Sorry.
You were?
I mean, so there's two ways to do this. This really is a private request from a property owner. But rather than having it come up through a petitioned article, my preference would be that this would be a select board sponsored, thank you, article. And the reason for that is because if we accept it by petition, we really have no flexibility to tweak it or change it if we need to correct and, you know, just kind of wordsmith it a little bit. So it has to be right the first time. So I normally would not ask in a situation where someone is coming to you or coming to the town meeting, asking for something for their private use. I typically would not say that
Right.
that should be a select board sponsored article. But because for logistical purposes, to allow us and town council to work together to craft the language appropriately, it would actually be a lot more helpful if we could control the article.
Right.
Which
And-
makes sense.
And I actually like that process better. I mean, if people will come and ask us to support something rather than feeling that they need to do a citizen's petition, it's a better process. And I think there have been other times, and I'm thinking about the proclamation that we made about doing something where they were gonna try to do a town meeting. And it was actually had to do with COVID, that we were delaying the town meeting, so they just ended up we ended up doing I wasn't on the board then, but it ended up being a proclamation, but that was the workaround, and I think it's a better process. In the article that we would for the easement, or whatever, granting the easement, will this be under the terms and conditions deemed by the select board to be in the best interest of the town? Not putting these particular things in the article? We will set these. Okay.
Yeah, no, these details can't go in the article.
Yeah. But the motion, we could have a motion to,
Sponsor an article.
to sponsor an article, for the easement and, to, accept to accept the recommendations of the DPW director for terms and conditions to be negotiated, to be part of the agreement. Is there a motion to that effect?
so move.
Second,
We clear about what we're saying?
yes.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed, abstentions? Well, thank you, thanks, Beth, this was, very well done in terms of your thinking about what we needed to be concerned about, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next is articles of warrant. I think the warrant is actually before that, so.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It is. So-
I was
sorry about
confused,
that.
that's all
Yeah,
right.
it's above it.
So this is,
Articles.
Article 6. Okay, are you just like are you asking, we're just gonna go through all these,
We're
we're
just-
not voting anything?
No, we're just gonna go through them.
Okay,
So this is your standard standing article to allow committees, boards and officers to vote, make a report to town meeting. And right now, the Southside Fire Station Committee intends on making a report. I haven't heard of anyone else yet.
okay, that's good. Any questions? Comments? Article 15, Human Services.
And Deb Oliveri is here as the Council on Aging Director to talk to you about the Human Services grant work.
Hi Deb, you want to come talk to us about this article?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Debbie Oliveri. I am the co-chair of the Human Services Committee, as well as the Council on Aging Director. The article states to see if the town will vote to raise the appropriate or transfer from the available funds to the sum of $20,000 for the Human Service Grant Program, or take any action in relation thereto. This has been level funded for the last 3 or 4 years at $20,000. And there are approximately 8 to 10 human service agencies that take advantage of this program from year to year. They submit an application, and they have to, be a 501c3 nonprofit organization, have description of services. They have to state how many Bourne residents are served in the last fiscal year. They send us financials, and the committee reviews each application, and then we award the grants in August usually.
Any questions about Human Services Grant Program?
How long has the grant program been in place?
Well, it used to be part of the human service budget was part of the COA budget. And back in FY22, I believe, we moved to a grant, so it became an article. There was a change. The former town administrator took a look at it and thought this was a better way to go. We looked at what other towns were doing and how they were handling it, and so, but I have, records back to 2000. So I know that we've been awarding these human service agencies since the year 2000 at least.
And it was way before that. Yeah, it's been pretty consistent, and a lot of times they're the same things. God's Knoll, Big Brother, Big Sister, Visiting Nurse Association, it's pretty consistent in terms of the agencies. Deb, could you talk about, though, the applications, the dollar amount of requests that you receive and what we're able to fund? Last year, you don't have the applications yet for this year, but last year?
Yes, so last year we had 10 applications, and they totaled at $47,000, $40,200. And we had $20,000 to disperse, so it was a lot higher. People are looking for more money. I think the year before, we had about $32,000 in requests.
And am I correct that the VNA is no longer as part of this grant program? It's still in the budget of the COA, is that correct now?
It's not in the budget of the COA, it is in the health department's budget.
Okay.
It's a line item there, and it's usually around $22,000.
Okay,
Because it's a contract
right.
with the VNA.
Right. So, I would like to see the requests and think about this next year in terms of whether we should be thinking about, I'd like to be able to look at the requests received and determine whether we need to think about doing more money. I know some of them.
Absolutely.
I think that there's a lot of people in the community that benefit from it, and that we should, so let's, I think the 20,000 going into annual town meeting, but I do think also if you get significant requests, because you ask for them now and you don't grant them until after the fiscal year, and if there's a lot of requests that can't be fulfilled, the board should know about that, so that we could consider additional funding in the fall.
That's great. Sure, I could do that. It's usually part of, the annual town report, so, but we do have a table listing what is requested and what is awarded, so we can absolutely do that.
That'd be great. Okay, any other questions about Article 15? Thank you very much. Thanks for
Thank
two
you.
nights in a row. Article 16, reduce membership of the Cultural Council. Is there anyone here for that? Who requested that? The Bourne Cultural Council?
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Pretty cut and dry, that one.
Well, it is
Well,
pretty cut and dry, but it's
sure-
also because it was increased. There was a point of time where there were like 8 members, and then it was increased because a lot of people wanted to serve on the council. So they increased the number of people on the council, and now
When
they're
did
not
we
as many
increase this to
people.
11? I feel like I remember that. 5 years ago?
It might have been.
I feel like I remember doing that.
Funny how COVID works.
Yeah, I mean, so they're having trouble with,
Keep it.
Quorums.
Yeah.
to keeping quorums, and I think they'll have, so going down to 5, and then if someone else wants to serve, we can always increase it in the future.
So there's currently 6. There's a vacancy, and then there's a member until qualified replacement, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yeah,
So there are 6 members currently with 1 vacancy.
is this the one where you're only allowed to serve for a certain amount of time, and then
Yes.
you have to
There's
leave?
term limits.
So the people, where it's until another qualified person,
Right,
they've
must be a
served
term limit.
more than the term limit, but they're allowed to stay on
Until a qualified
until
replacement.
there's a qualified, until there's a qualified replacement, so. Okay, well, this sounds like reasonable, and we should just make sure that we are able to explain. Okay. Any other questions on that one? All right, next is bylaws, Scrivener's errors.
So we have, I believe, about 11 instances in the general bylaws where the text, the word 30, is followed by a parens of 31. So we want to go through the bylaw and have it read 30, parens 30.
Sounds good.
Really good.
Well, that makes sense.
I feel like I can maybe manage that. That I feel like I can handle.
Put that on your goals list.
Yes, I can put that on my goals list.
Article 18, capital bylaw, change the amount to 25.
So this is coming out of the discussion for the financial policy working group. And right now, there are 2 thresholds in the capital bylaw. One is $10,000 for equipment, and one is $20,000 for items that essentially are real, buildings or associated with structures. Unfortunately, $10,000 doesn't really cut it anymore.
It was $10,000 in 2005.
And it requires a lot of, it doesn't require, it requires a lot of extra steps to go through the capital outlay process and for really small, at this point, considered small purchases. So we'd like to create one threshold of $25,000 for capital.
With inflation the way it is and everything else, I think it's a realistic number.
Very.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions, comments? I think, zoning, Article 21, Section 1238, SPR Traffic and Circulation Plan.
And Jennifer Copeland and I believe Liz Brown are here to go through the zoning articles with you.
Okay. Jennifer or Liz, who's going to speak?
It'll be me. Thank you, Madam Chair and the board. I'm Jennifer Copeland, the town planner, and I'm here tonight to present on 5 zoning articles for town meeting. The first article is Article 21. This article is to amend Section 1238 of the zoning bylaw relative to site plan review for traffic and internal circulation for fire equipment. The amendment actually is very simple. It deletes 25 from the CMR reference. So several years ago, the Massachusetts Fire Code was rearranged, and Chapter 25 is now Chapter 18. So it's recommended to delete the chapter from the language and keep the CMR to encompass the entire fire code.
Okay.
Article 22 is section 1242.1. This would change in our current zoning bylaw, it's a 2-year expiration for a special permit time lapse, and this would be changed to reflect the state time frame for 3 years. So it would be consistent with Chapter 40A of the Zoning Act.
Okay.
Article 23 is for interim egress control in the traffic management district. The traffic management district runs along Scenic Highway and south of the canal on Sandwich Road. And this, what we're doing is removing a sunset clause in there. And so it would take out an expiration date of 2020 that's currently written into the bylaw. And it would aid in reducing the impacts of new access points on Scenic Highway and Sandwich Road until the opening of a limited access highway connecting Route 6 with MacArthur Boulevard or Route 25. The section was originally adopted in 1996, and it had an expiration date of 2006. Then in 2006, that was extended to 2020. So we're proposing just to remove the expiration date on it altogether. Article 24 is, it's actually the use table in our downtown district. It's section 2821, and under the use of a home occupation, there is a functional standard and special permit criteria, which is supposed to reference the section of our home occupation. So it has an incorrect section reference as 4120, but the correct section should be 4110. And then the last article is Article 25, that's section 4110 for accessory dwelling units. And one of the zoning strategies that was identified in our town local comprehensive plan and our housing production plan is to revise the current accessory dwelling bylaw to encourage the creation of in-law and year-round accessory dwellings that can provide significant housing opportunities for residents. So an accessory dwelling unit, it's a separate unit within an owner-occupied home, typically as part of the surplus space in a single-family home, or it can be separated from the principal dwelling with its own kitchen, bathroom, and living facilities. And I have a couple of slides I wanted to show if I could possibly share my screen. Let me see here. So, is this over here? So here is the proposed accessory dwelling bylaw. The current zoning bylaw actually requires a special permit. It's regulated through section 4120, and the Zoning Board of Appeals is the special permit granting authority for the accessory dwellings. It must serve a significant community purpose, such as facilitating care for the elderly or handicapped or providing housing at an unusually low cost. An accessory dwelling must be attached to the primary dwelling, and a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals is required if the accessory dwelling is detached from the principal dwelling. a gross floor area and lot coverage worksheet per our non-conforming section of 2450 is needed for accessory dwellings to accompany the ZBA application. If the accessory dwelling is more than 30% of the gross floor area, then a variance from the ZBA is required. I think I just wanted to do a little housing summary. Bourne's housing goal is to create an adequate supply of housing that is safe, healthy, and attainable for all people of all income levels and diverse needs to purchase or rent. Amending the accessory dwelling zoning bylaw is a priority goal in our LCP and our housing production plan. And of the 15 Cape Cod towns, 13 of them allow accessory dwellings by right, while Bourne is one of the 2 remaining towns that are by special permit. And one important point is that 28% of the workers commute from off Cape on Cape due to the high housing costs. So people in the workforce are having a hard time finding permanent housing.
Isn't it 47%?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's higher than that, Jen.
unless that number's changed since a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think that originally was like 47%. Traveling over the bridge.
This is from the 2021 census data. It could be higher now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our zoning districts and lot sizes, so accessory dwellings would be allowed by right in our residential and R40 and R80 districts. Also in a village business district, a B2, B4, and downtown district. Right now, any lot that's under 40,000 square feet in an R40 district or 80,000 in an R80 district would require a special permit for an accessory dwelling. And we have a total of about 7,800 single family lots. So 82% of the single family lots would require a special permit for an accessory dwelling. The goals after the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Bourne Housing Partnership and Bourne Housing Trust had a joint meeting and really worked through all of the details of the bylaw. So the goal of these proposed amendments is to allow permitting it as a by right accessory use to a lawful single-family dwelling. It would require a permit with site plans, floor plans, and elevations, as well as an accessory dwelling sheet to determine the 50%. It could be attached or detached to the principal structure. It must be subordinate and less than 50% of the floor area of the principal single-family dwelling. It has to conform with all state and local building codes, Title V, and it would be designed to maximize the appearance of a single-family residential property. The principal dwelling and the ADU must remain in common ownership, which cannot be severed, and it cannot be used for boarding, lodging, and other commercial uses except for home occupation. The ADU and the principal dwelling may be rented for periods no shorter than 90 days at a time and are prohibited from any use as a rental unit on a weekly or daily basis. The benefits of accessory dwellings is to increase the availability of quality, smaller year-round housing, sustain Bourne's workforce to support our local economy, facilitate aging in place for elderly homeowners to remain in their homes. It can also be used to increase the flow of income for younger families to afford home ownership, and better use and expansion of Bourne's housing stock. So I'm gonna stop. So there are numerous benefits to easing the restrictions on the ADU, and they're listed right here. And I think that's it. we'll stop sharing the screen.
There you go.
I think one thing that came up last night too was, it was regarding the lot size. So the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet, but also if somebody were to add an accessory dwelling, they would have to conform to our dimensional standards that are located in the section 2500. For instance, for the front, the side, the rear setbacks, for height, and for lot area coverage.
Okay. So Jen, is that where the 20% thing comes or something for the 5,000? The 2,500 the 2,500 is for everything in zoning. It's not just for the accessory dwelling, is that correct?
Correct. So an accessory dwelling would have to conform to the dimensional regulations. What it wouldn't apply to is the section 2450 for non-conforming lots, which currently has a gross floor area and a lot coverage table. The
Yes.
accessory dwellings would have their own calculation for a gross floor area for the existing dwelling to determine and make sure that it's 50% of the primary dwelling.
No more than
No more.
50%.
Under 50.
Yeah, no more than 50%.
And but there's also like some 1,500 square foot,
That's the maximum. if
That's
you
the
have a
maximum.
5,000 square foot lot.
right? The 1,500 square foot is the maximum accessory dwelling, I think.
Yeah.
Because I think I did,
Yes.
I think I did that division, it was like 30%, so that's good.
I think it's 2 bedrooms as well.
No more than
Yes,
2
so it's-
bedrooms and no
it's-
more than 1,500 square feet.
Yeah, so it's no greater than 50% of the floor area of the primary dwelling, and it has a maximum size of the accessory dwelling is no more than 1,500 square feet with 2 bedrooms.
Right, there's a
There
lot.
also is a parking requirement. Jen, can you just mention that?
Yes, yes, it has to have adequate septic and sewerage, and for properties that are outside of the downtown, 1 parking space is required per bedroom, in addition to what is required for the principal single-family dwelling. In the downtown district, the requirement is 1 space per dwelling unit.
Okay. Any questions from the board? I know PJ has her hand up. Are there any questions from the board on this? I just want to make a comment. I've been to a couple meetings that had, that reviewed this, and I think there's been a lot of really good work done on this, and I found the housing partnership meeting that I was at, I think it was last week, time flies, was really good in like really being careful about the language about owner occupied and at least one of the, so that I think it's really been good. I think this is one of those things that I think we have to really think about how it's gonna be presented to town meeting and how we get, like, simplified, just so the key points are in there that we can really talk about, so, because I think it's important that this passes, so. Any comments or questions from the board first?
No, it's just, I think something that's long overdue, and I think it'll be a great tool for the town to have at their disposal.
I mean, there's constantly people looking for like a 1-bedroom apartment less than $1,600, I mean.
Right. Or even a studio or,
Yeah, anything.
When
Okay.
13 out of your 15 communities already have it by right, we might as well,
Yeah. There's a job, good job, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, Priscilla, you have a comment? Question?
Yeah, sure. This work done on this is really good. Seems very thorough, and it's in line with your intent. In other towns, I've seen similar things and putting more restrictions on something like this. For example, the town of Tewksbury has what they call, not sure how they term it, but it's basically an in-law dwelling, and it must be attached. And these are just some other restrictions that you don't have. must be attached, and every year, it has to be proved that the person or people who live in the dwelling, the accessory dwelling, are related to the persons in the primary dwelling. So that's one way that a town kind of has restrictions on this sort of thing. One thing you may want to add is that each lot can only have one accessory dwelling. Because, you know, when something like this comes up in a town, a bylaw change, what I tend to think of, because I'm a worst case scenario thinker, is if this is totally built out on every single lot, what is this gonna look like? So, you know, I don't know if that's how you folks think, but it helps to kind of project into the future what the ramifications of a decision like this are. And it helps you to think about more restrictions possibly. So those are my comments. I think it's a really good job. I'm trying to figure out what it would look like in terms of sewer. As with every project, as you probably know, there's one thing that you never think is gonna drive the project, but I suspect sewerage is gonna be, in a lot of these cases, the driving factor. You know, I keep thinking about all the other possibilities, like, you know, the Verbo properties, and all of those folks who have investment properties are also gonna wanna put this accessory dwelling on their properties. So, you know, thinking about the total build out, it doesn't, you know, sadly, it doesn't alleviate this issue. But yeah, I mean, I think you folks did really thorough job on that. And thank you for this courtesy. I appreciate your consideration.
Thanks. I will say that, is there only one, Jen, there's only one accessory dwelling unit per lot, right?
Yes, it's one accessory dwelling per lot.
And some of the
Just
small,
looking through.
yeah,
I know it's in here somewhere. Yeah, one accessory dwelling is permitted as by right, is still also single, yeah, so it's only one. It's, 4121A, development requirements, the first one.
and the other thing, Priscilla, is that this bylaw requires that either the primary house or the accessory dwelling be owner occupied. So, that if you, this is not intended to, and it says the ADU and principal dwelling may be rented for periods no shorter than 90 days at a time and are prohibited from any use as rental units on a weekly or daily basis. So they have addressed the you know, Airbnb thing. They want to make sure this is really an owner-occupied property where they're going to be providing an accessory dwelling for the workforce.
Okay, and I do have my hand up again.
Okay.
Because I thought of another thing, having actually designed some of these units. There was one case in Tewksbury where the accessory unit was not separate from the original. The intent of the owner was to increase the property value by just having an accessory unit. And the unit ended up being part of the basement, was never built out. You know, the footprint of the original house was never increased. But they put the accessory unit within the house. So I don't know if you want to include any kind of language.
That is allowed under this. That is allowed under this. And when Sue Ross, who's part of the housing partnership, she was talking about the smaller unit lots that are like the 5,000 square foot lots. She said in many of those situations, it's gonna end up being that kind of situation where it's in the they're not adding a building, they're just taking part of their house and making it accessory dwelling. So I think any zoning bylaw is subject to maybe having to be tweaked after a while, but I think this is I think they've done a really good, thorough job, in making a good, solid bylaw.
Yes, I concur. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments about accessory dwelling? Good job. Thanks very much. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
I noticed Jean Azarowitz is on too, as well as Jen Copeland, so.
Can I have a point of personal privilege?
Yes, you may have a point of personal privilege.
The game's gone final with 71-60. Bourne did win.
Hey.
Yeah,
So,
on to the semis.
and for the people at home that weren't there or don't watch it online, we're just giving you the update as we get them. Thank you. Great job, guys. Thanks, Coach.
Fantastic, yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. Next
All
is,
right, thank you.
thank you very much,
Thank you.
Jim.
Thanks.
Town Administrator's Report.
Thanks. So the Division of Marine Fisheries held a stakeholder meeting yesterday regarding the reclassification of shellfish growing areas in Buzzards Bay, which was attended by representatives from Bourne. The area under discussion right now only pertains to land off of the New Bedford and Fairhaven coasts. DMF is anticipating studying the canal area in the future, but that may still be a little ways off. An update on the Toby Island ramp repairs that were gifted to the town last year, if you recall. Work is anticipated to begin in early April with paving in early May. The DPW is going to begin installing a small town seal emblem on the street signs for town-owned roads. This will assist the crews in confirming they are working on public roads when they are out doing routine maintenance or other projects. I have attended a briefing about a county initiative to establish a shared regional housing services program. This could potentially be a very beneficial opportunity for us. The planning office and I will continue to watch this carefully and stay involved. By the end of February, ISWIM has diverted 2.54 tons of food waste from the landfill. And I would like to remind everyone that if they are waiting to the last minute and have not already renewed their dog license, that they're running out of time.
Well, it's all set.
If you
We're good.
haven't done your
Okay.
dog license,
Yeah.
do it now.
Do it now.
Okay, thank you. Authorize the town administrator to sign the home program modification request documents for 20 High Ridge Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
No?
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, abstentions? There's an excellent explanation in the packet.
It's very thorough.
Okay, policy, second reading, layout and acceptance of private ways by petition.
I'm gonna turn this over to the Policies Committee and Tim Lyden.
So, let me get to the right screen here. This was in your packet, right? And, is this the same version that the policy subcommittee saw, or did some of the other language from the, from town council get included?
Yes, this includes the highlighted text added by town council.
Okay, so this has been reviewed by town council, and he has, made some comments. And I don't know if anyone anyone on the board has concerns. or comments for this second reading? We did change, it was changed to reflect the 75% of people instead of the 100% signing.
I was just looking for that.
Yeah.
I literally was just looking for that.
And whatever the other comments were from the last select board meeting, when we had the first reading, have been incorporated.
With the addition to that, in the event you don't get the 75%, there's still opportunity to come to the select board.
Yes. And the select board can
Can.
vote to,
By forfeits vote
Yeah.
to approve the process forward.
Yep.
So that was a big addition.
so I think it's pretty clearly laid out now, in terms of what they have to provide, when they have to provide it, what the town has to do, and what the deadlines are to get it to the next town meeting. So I think it's been great work by Tim Lydon, working on this very diligently, and Marlene.
And just, MJ, if I can, I know the it was important to us to show you kind of the evolution of this document. but
Right.
It's a mess, like the document itself
Yeah,
is a
I was
mess.
gonna suggest that
So-
we bring it back, that we put it in, like, accept all the changes, have it in a final format, and then be able to read it, because it's really hard to read it. And at this point, I'm really concerned about, I think I found a couple things, and I'm not gonna be able to find them now, but
Yep.
that were like, that when you end up putting it together, we're gonna find some Scrivener's things, so.
So if it's okay with the board, going forward, the next round, I would like to use a clean version and not a
Yep.
red line version, so we can
Yes.
read it.
Well, it's the third version is the last one, so yeah,
Yes.
it would make
Yeah.
sense to have it finalized.
Queen.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
So, can we have a motion to move it to third reading?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed, abstentions? And I'd like to get this on pretty quick so that we can get it done,
Yeah.
have it out there,
Get it
so
off the
people
list.
know what
Get
they
it
have to
off
do
the
by
list.
July 1st. Thanks, Tim,
Thank you. Welcome.
being here late.
Happy birthday to your daughter.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, good progress. Okay, minutes. Minutes of December 5th.
Motion to approve. Minutes of 12/5/23.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, abstentions? Opposition? It's unanimous, okay. Next is the minutes of 2/6.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Peter, second by Anne Marie. Is there any discussion?
Just making sure that's not the one I was,
That was in January,
yeah, I thought so. I'm just making sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I was there. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, abstentions? It's unanimous. And next is,
Motion to approve 2/13/24.
Second.
motion by Peter, second by Melissa. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? It's unanimous.
And motion to approve the minutes of 2/20/24.
Is there a second?
Seconded?
Motion by Peter, second by Jared. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? It's unanimous. Awesome. Committee reports.
I've been to 2 meetings over the last little bit. One was executive session for the police building committee, and I will leave that to the town administrator of what we can talk about there. And the other one is the Southside Fire Station Committee, and they were here earlier today. That presentation speaks for itself. But with the police building committee, I don't know what is best to say, if anything. Nothing at this point. Okay, so nothing at this point.
For me, I think, of course, we have the Joint Base Cape Cod meeting monthly. We just had it this week. A lot of the stuff that we talk about, you know, I mean, they go around the room, and if it's nothing pressing, you know, a lot of the people just kind of pass by. I really do hope to maybe actually kind of maybe coordinate with yourself and Marlene before those meetings, maybe, just
Okay.
to see if there's something you think that is pressing that I should be sharing,
Okay.
that I might miss, or that maybe, you know, we hadn't talked about yet that could be coming up. But yeah, overall they go well, and it's a good group, so it's a good opportunity for everyone to get in the room together and share, so.
CTEC did meet, we're having another meeting on Thursday. One of the big issues right now is the digital equity plan that came out, and a very short window of opportunity to make comments and feedback. So if we can get that on the agenda, we're finalizing those on Thursday's meeting.
Right,
to
Bob
get them
had
to the
written to
select
me, and
board.
I said that we put time on the 19th, because you need that in order.
It's, yeah, by the 25th.
Yeah, so we have to do
Okay.
the 19th as our,
Good.
Is
And then the Mass Development meeting with Joint Base Cape Cod and all the constituents. I think it's real important to establish a good path of communication with Mass Development at this point in time. They're in the beginning stages of, and I don't know if they've been in touch with you, Marlene?
They have.
Okay, so, but I did speak with Trish after that meeting, and encouraged her to reach out to the select board, to come, to sit at the table, to have the conversation. It's the beginning stages of their feasibility study, and, but it's an important process that we really need to have a voice in from the start. You know, because sometimes the state just takes one path and moves very aggressively. So, yeah, we need to be at that table, definitely, to ensure that they understand what our needs are and what we foresee as what's gonna be the best housing and the best use of that property that the military has divested.
I was at the same meeting, I got up and spoke during the meeting, but Anne Marie's presentation now is much more eloquent, so, I mean, I can't really add any more to it, but I will say that there was a newspaper article last week, and I know I made the comment that I was pounding the pavement to get the state to come to the table. I was in the spirit of the moment of being there and seeing everybody around the room. I mean, it was this board that was seated as board over the last couple of years that did it, and that really had to get on the, you know, the state on MassDOT, and former member Judy Froman was very active, and as was CCMPO rep, so it wasn't just me singly, it was the board, you know, board of members of the select board at the time. We all were not happy about it, and so I just want to clarify the record that was in the Enterprise on Friday. It wasn't his fault. I went back and watched the tape, you know, it was just, I was rambling on. And so I just want to make sure that, to reflect that it was the board as a whole, as well as the town administrator, so.
And they do have, you know, a plan for outreach, but
Yeah.
it's a very aggressive process. I mean, if they want an RFP by the fall for those particular parcels, the school site and the fire station, that's a very aggressive timeline.
I think they're looking
So-
to make an impact quickly. I mean, I
And
think
the
it's
housing
I think
crisis
it's
is a
initiative of
crisis, there's
the
no
governor.
doubt
They're-
about it, the housing crisis is a crisis and it needs to move quick.
Right, so
But their definition, I think the definition of what they consider the needs is, there's a little bit of a disconnect with what we consider our needs to
So
be.
we should probably see if we
and
can have them
think-
come in.
Absolutely, I think
Yeah,
the
let's-
sooner the
let's
better.
get that on the schedule.
And,
Yeah.
if we can,
Yeah.
and Trish is very
It
open to
may
that.
not be till May,
And
but
Barrett,
well,
right,
let's,
right.
but let's,
And that's kind of the timeline for their outreach right now,
okay,
spring.
yeah. You had something else?
Yes, I didn't want to forget, although I'm not on that committee, I did attend the Historic Commission meeting this morning and sat through while they, did their agenda items to get to the town seal. Figured it was important. It was the first meeting after we had
Right.
sort of brought the task to the table. So it did, of course, we got to the seal. I did bring some literature with me. I had spoke to Pierce Cody, who was the consultant for the town of Mashpee. And they took they went through the RFP process because it was a citizen's petition in their town, so it was a bit different than ours right now. But it was a good meeting. It was nice to have it on the table and to at least discuss it. They did discuss some of the elements, and such. So, other than that, I mean, I'll let them kind of report back more to you, but at least it was, it's on the move, so. Just wanted to share that.
I was at a meeting of the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund Management Board and Executive Committee with the Bylaws Committee. And they are looking to make a change to the bylaws that would change the way projects are funded in order to continue the 25% subsidy for projects. They have realized the way the money, there's been a lot of use of the money and it's been spent down quickly. But we're proposing a change to the bylaws and that committee should be meeting again before the end of the month to be able to make the changes that they've worked out with the SRF to be able to continue that subsidy. So that's good news for us because we're gonna need it in the future and getting the 25% subsidy is good. Okay.
One more.
Oh, go ahead.
We did our first Bourne Community Engagement Committee meeting. So, and we did have recommended language change from Town's Council with respects to the application process. So we're incorporating that. Liz Brown's done a great job with kind of documenting the changes and looking at how we can best fund as many projects as we can moving forward. So
And
that's where we're at right now.
are you taking out the 501c3 requirement?
We are.
That
So it's
can
not
be-
going to be strictly nonprofit,
But not for
not
profit.
for profit.
That's good. That's a great change, because that allows Board
That
on
is
the
a big
Fourth, Board on the Fourth to go and get
Oh, yeah,
support.
it's used
So that's great. Okay, future agenda items?
Just the CTEC.
Yeah, I've got that on, I'll have that for the 19th.
I think we should have Mass Maritime in at some point, maybe over the summer. There's a lot of, they're always doing something new over there. And so I feel that the Admiral or Captain Metcalf could come to the board and give a report at some point.
Marlene and I can talk to them at the next meeting.
Okay, next meeting is tomorrow, marijuana policy workshop.
3:00.
And then March 19th, April 2nd, April 9th, and the 16th. And the legislative update will be April 30th. So
Oh, okay.
Markey's office, Keating's office, Elizabeth Warren's office, David Vieira, Stephen Zero, Sue Moran all said that they could come on the 30th. Christy Senatori and Steve Mealy will come from the county commission. So it'll be a real,
Robust.
robust discussion of things that are going on. And I do have a email to Ron Barkson, because Mark Forrest can't make it, it's Yarmouth Town Meeting. But if we can't do the county, we'll do them later, because we saw them in August anyway, so. Okay then, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Should I read correspondence?
Oh, correspondence.
Correspondence
Correspondence
of March 12,
before future
2024.
meeting
A,
agendas, yeah.
DEP letter, fire training area 1 lice meter work plan. B, 90 Adams Street, Sagamore Boosters reconveyance. C, Cape Cod Regional Pond Monitoring Program 2023. D, Cape Cod Commission Developments of Regional Impact Funding. E, Cape Cod Regional Pond Monitoring Program 2023 data. F, J, Spinelli Talent Bank Forum ZBA Bylaw Committee. G, Freshwater Initiative Stakeholder Engagement Process. H, Steamship Authority Parking. I, Conservation Notice to Abutters 166 Wings Neck Road Septic. J, letter referencing former AmeriGas leased property. K, DEP waterways application, pier and ramp at 394 Scraggy Neck. And L, DEP letter, CSE Phase 2 ammunition supply point.
Thanks. We're probably gonna have to have a future agenda item on the, Sagamore Civic Booster Club
Yep,
thing.
we've got that
Yeah.
penciled in.
Okay, and I actually forgot to mention that I zoomed in on that Department of Marine Fisheries meeting. It was very educational in terms of the new regulations of dilution and where is prohibited and the different scenarios. It was very interesting. They're using a model from UMass Dartmouth, and they're going to do Dartmouth, then Ipswich, then Bourne Wareham, then Mass Maritime. So we're on the list, but not, so. Okay, so did you get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Seconded?
Motion by Peter, second by Jared. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, abstentions? It's unanimous.